Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Dr. Sunjata, and you can see a little snippet of my face in this slide here. Just because of the way the theme is, I couldn't fit my entire face in there, but just want to give you an idea partially of what I look like for those of you who have not met me. And if you visit and find me online, you'll get to see, what I look like fully. Before I jump into the presentation, I just want to first let you know that I'm just recording this live without any editing. So you may hear some noise in the background from time to time. You may hear me bumble and stumble my words, but I hope that you enjoyed this presentation and you can kind of work through some of those errors when they occur. So I want to start out by first telling you a little bit about who I am. So I'm an independent educator and a social sustainability activist. My work focuses on designing and promoting equitable and sustainable social, economic, and political systems. I co-founded and co-facilitated a self-directed education school called GROW and spearheaded its operations during its four-year evolution from 2015 to 2019, from the planning phases to the startup, to operating and working with children and families, and ultimately to its closing in February of 2019. During that time period, I learned a lot from every single stage in GROW's evolution. So it is a combination of those lessons learned, my education and work as a systems thinker, and my deep desire to see ALC and SDE learning spaces that are accessible to all who choose them, no matter their socioeconomic standing, that inspired me to conceptualize the GROW model. So who is this for? The GROW model is for unschooling parents and young people who are interested in being a part of a learning community to diversify and possibly enhance their learning experiences. Those who are not interested in the time commitment required to start and operate a business, and those who are seeking liberation from the pressures and traps of conventional systems. For example, like conventional schools and conventional business models, etc. So while I was putting together this presentation, I had a thought that came to mind around the concept of liberation. This whole unschooling, movement that has been going on for many years is all about liberation. But liberation spans across, it has a lot of context among many different themes in our social systems. And one of the things that I thought about when putting together this presentation is a lot of people, when they think about putting together a unschooling school, like a ALC, et cetera, they take a lot of time to focus on the rules, in terms of the laws that may be in place for, starting a program in their city or in their state. A lot of parents, when they're thinking about unschooling, they wonder, well, am I allowed to take my child out of school? And if I am, do I need to report that? Or how do I go about reporting that, et cetera? However, I also know there's some families, when they decide to unschool their children, they don't worry about that at all. They just unschool their child and they don't ask for permission to do so. So with starting a program like this, one of the reasons why I named this How to Start and Run a Tuition-Free ALC SDE Cooperative UnBusiness is because I believe in order for what I'm about to explain to you to work, in order for it to work, it has to work outside of the conventional context. Just like a lot of innovations and liberation movements require you to break laws or requires you to kind of scribble outside the lines, this presentation and what I'm going to share with you will also require the same. So just depending on your tolerance, your risk tolerance, or your rebellious, your willingness to be rebellious, you'll determine how this sits with you and if it's something that you can do. But I want to leave you with this thought that came to mind. I think about the liberation movements throughout history, and I think about Harriet Tubman, for example. And I asked myself, did Harriet Tubman ask for permission when she decided to take it upon herself to liberate enslaved Africans through the Underground Railroad? Did the Haitian people who decided to take up arms and fight for their liberation, the Haitian people of African descent who fought for and earned their freedom from France in the 1700s, did they ask permission? And the founders of America, the quote unquote forefathers of this country, right? Did they ask permission from Great Britain when they decided that they wanted to form their own country? I think we all know the answer to those questions, and the answer was no. And I look at what we're doing here with self-directed education and unschooling in the same light. And when you talk about creating a model that's based in the idea of being tuition free and the cooperative, I think about that as a liberation type movement as well. And we can't ask for permission. We just have to do it if we're going to do it. So I hope that resonates, and I hope it makes sense. So who is this, or let me say this, the problems that the GROW model solves. We're going to discuss that next. And I'm reading some notes here, so you're going to hear me, reading at times, and just me kind of going off script at times, because I don't want this to go too long. So I made sure to write down some notes here. So in addition to learning from our experiences at GROW, I also attended several ALC network trainings over the last few years, and I listened to the challenges that many of our peers were having starting and or operating their programs. And the common themes were, one, balancing affordability with program sustainability. So some examples of that were, some of the programs chose to do a sliding scale tuition, which is awesome because it kind of balances things for families who make, depending on how much your family makes will determine how much you pay. And that kind of makes those programs more equitable. But a challenge with that is if you have too many families at the front end of the sliding scale, of the sliding scale or the lower end, then that can cause some problems, again, balancing affordability with sustainability. And also the agony. I've heard, founders talk about the agony of having to turn people away who can't afford the program and who can't afford to attend. So, I kept that in mind when creating the GROW model, because, we wanted our model to be accessible to everyone, no matter their socioeconomic background. Another problem with this is navigating the need to fundraise with the disproportionate return on time invested to do so. So some founders just, spoke about just those fundraising efforts and how much time went into it, and oftentimes not feeling like they were getting a good return on the time invested to do so. A lot of people who get into the nonprofit world for the first time, they just think that, raising money is just something that is going to be fairly easy. It's like, I start a nonprofit, then all of a sudden, voila, people are just going to donate money. Well, just like in the for-profit world, there's a lot of competition in the nonprofit world as well. Your family, your friends, your peers, everyone's getting hit up by someone about donating to, a program. So it's hard, when your program, jumps into that as well. It can be really challenging to raise money for those reasons. Another challenge is program debt. Some programs, they incur debt just trying to keep the program going. And, that's really tough when you're doing something, to help people and you want to be equitable, but within the capitalism model, unfortunately, a lot of times that requires you to incur debt, and that can put a level of pressure and stress on founders. And finally, the direct impact of these variables on the need to pay rent, utilities, supplies, and facilitator salaries, etc., all play a role in the whole idea of balancing affordability with program sustainability. And unfortunately, there have been programs that have closed down over the years because of the challenges of balancing all of that. And in my mind, one of the motivations for creating this model is that that's just not right. You have people who want to do what's right for people and want to do what's right for their community. I don't think that when you endeavor to do that, you should have to worry about all those variables and have to worry about being shut down because of the pressures of, capitalism and the way our current economic model is set up. So what you're going to hear in this presentation is my efforts to avoid all of that. So the next problem is facilitator burnout. So another problem that founders speak to is a lack of parent engagement in their programs, too much work for one or two facilitators, and the stress of having to work with the children by day and then run the business by night and weekends. So oftentimes these programs are run by people who are the facilitators by day, and then at night they're having to do all the business stuff that I just spoke of. And their weekends are bogged down with doing all the business organizing things. And, that can lead to burnout. And also no time to cultivate personal interests. A lot of people jump into unschooling their children or starting programs like this, to help children. But ultimately they lose themselves in that. And that's not a good thing. So that's something else. That's another thing that I took into consideration when creating the GROW model. So let's talk about a fail-proof startup and some of the ideas I have for accomplishing that. So again, the systems thinker in me and someone who wants to design solutions that design out the problems in the old model, I took all those things into consideration when thinking about the GROW model. So in order for what I'm going to explain to work, you need to have a certain foundation. This only can work if you have a certain foundation. And that foundation is this. One, you're already unschooling your children or your child, and you have space. So the first part is this. If you're already unschooling your child, then you've already made the necessary sacrifices in your life to organize your life around having the ability to stay home or be at home, whether it be because you have a very supportive network, you have the privilege of being able to work from home because maybe you have a partner or co-parent who works and supports you in that way, or you work from home. Whatever the variables may be, you have the privilege of doing that, and you have space, meaning you have your own home that can accommodate children, or a community space that you run or own, maybe like a business or a church or a rec center that you run or you own and you're in control of. And you can invite other children into your space, other families and children into your space. If you don't have that, then this model won't work for you. But if you do, then you're in there. You're almost, you basically solved a lot of the problems that, that pop up for folks. The next thing is that you have to start as a cooperative where members chip in time and resources. So within this model, I thought about how can we do this without the need for money? How can we do this without the need for having to hire employees? Okay. And if you start as a cooperative and where other families are all contributing time and resources, then that's how you can accomplish that. So let's dig into that a little bit deeper. So in terms of space, how would that look? Well, you could either have a fixed location if, again, you have access to your home that you can accommodate more children, or that business or church or rec center, et cetera. And let's say one family is able to contribute that space and accommodate 5, 10 to 20, young people. Great. Or it can be a rotating thing where families rotate, where I've heard of some programs where, or cooperatives where people rotate between homes. So you may go between 2 to 3 homes throughout a week, or bi-weekly or monthly, you're rotating between, spaces to make all this work. In terms of time, the parent facilitators, decide how many days they can contribute to the cooperative. So for example, if let's just say Malik and Sarah can facilitate on Monday and Tuesday, and Juan and Malika can facilitate on Wednesday and Thursday. This is something that can vary from week to week or from month to month, where different adult facilitators or parents decide that they're going to take on that role to facilitate, and these are the days they can do it. And the beautiful thing about it, for those of you who are currently unschooling and, taking on that burden, all on your own, by sharing the responsibility with others, it can get you some free time back in your life so you can, again, pursue some of your passions and interests, et cetera. Another role that some of the parents can play in terms of chipping in is the role of organizational facilitator. So the organizational facilitator is the person who organizes everything from paperwork to helping out with bringing on new members, the application process, record keeping, organizing the parent roles, and setting up a calendar, doing all those organizational type things. If there's any finances involved with like field trips and materials and things like that, the organizational facilitator is the parent that can take take ownership of all of those things. The next role is a social media marketer. This person, if you desire to grow your program by going beyond just word of mouth, then you can have someone whose role it is to do just that on social media, just by sharing program pics and info and just how people can come and learn more about your program. Also, you can have external contributors. Maybe initially your program starts with families whose parents can chip in terms of being a facilitator and, splitting days. But as your program grows, you may decide to take on people who bring their children, but they can't contribute day to day because they may work, every day and don't have that, that time freedom, but they can contribute in other ways. So they can be an external contributor by offering their time and services in terms of what their professional skills are to your collaborative. So for example, if one of those parents happens to be a mechanic, one of the ways that they can chip in is by offering, a certain amount of hours, per week or per month to the cooperative that they can do car repair work. Or if someone's a doctor or a counselor or a massage therapist, or someone may be a farmer who can contribute produce, et cetera, to members of the cooperative. There's other ways that people can chip in, even if they can't, participate as facilitators. And in terms of getting the material resources that your program will need, all families are asked to contribute material resources, supplies, snacks, et cetera, whenever the need arises. And this is something that can just be communicated and people can just, chip in. I found that at GROW, we had no problems with that. People were more than happy to contribute supplies, materials, snacks, et cetera. And, that worked pretty well. So let's discuss the recruitment and partnership process next. So just some ideas to help you if you're thinking about taking this on and you want to know how to find other people who can do it with you. Many of you who are watching this, you may already be a part of various homeschooling communities online or local groups and meetups. So, and if you're not, that's the best place to start. The best place to start is, by going out, and there's several on Facebook, several of these groups on Facebook. You can also use meetup.com. You also can just search, homeschooling groups on Google in your local area, and you'll find some. There's also online forums like at the Alliance for Self-Directed Education, where there's groups organizing as well as a ton of just good information around, the experiences of others who are homeschooling/unschooling their children, whether it be at home or whether they're doing it as a part of a learning community or school. You can also create a Facebook group. I've, heard of certain groups, founding groups that created Facebook groups, and they just put the name, like, for example, founding an ALC SD cooperative in Atlanta, and then they just start sharing their story and their goals and the process that they're going through, and people join and contribute resources and share the word, and all of a sudden those groups grow, and they are able to find their co-founders and the founding members of their cooperative by doing these things. So the next step is the partnership process. So I just want to share with you basically, how we brought people into our cooperative at GROW, the steps that we took people through to make sure that they were the right fit and we were the right fit for them. Step one started with research. Unschooling and self-directed education is, it's not a simple thing to wrap your mind around when you're new to the concept. So we were really adamant about asking people to spend the time to go through our website and click on the resources page and read through the frequently asked questions and watch the videos that were provided there. That is extremely important because a lot of people will join because they believe that, our schools or our programs, our cooperatives are one way, and then they get involved and they realize, that's a little bit too much freedom for me and my children, and I'm not prepared to really parent that. There's a deschooling process that goes, that has to happen for families, not only parents, but also the children, in order to, thrive in this type of learning environment. So we really are adamant that people take the time to do so, even though we know that it isn't always, it isn't always going to prevent people from joining and then leaving because they realize it's not a good fit, but at least it kind of buffers that process a little bit and, gives them an idea what they're getting into before they join you. And then before there's, more tension down the road because they didn't feel like they knew what they were getting involved in. The next step is a visit. And the visit is another step towards kind of weeding people out, as well as them being able to determine if it's a good fit. So after they've done their research, they can visit your cooperative if it's already up and running, or, visit with you. If you're just, a parent who has a vision, visit with you and just exchange ideas and talk about, the various ideas that you want to put forth and the things that you want to do, just to determine if there's some synergy and if there's a fit. And, when we had our program at Grow, after the visit, we did an interview. And in that interview, we asked both the parents and the children, questions. And we wanted to see if they had questions for us, just to, again, continue that process of making sure that we're a good fit. And then the final step was applying online. So some tools and resources that will help you get started that we use that really were very helpful is the ALC Starter Kit. And these are free tools. There's a lot of tools and resources out there, but I want to include free tools and resources because, again, the whole mission behind this model is to be able to start the program in a cooperative sense, in a collaborative sense, and with not centering money. So with that being said, some tools that you can find online for free can be found at the Agile Learning Center website the ALC Starter Kit can be found at agilelearningcenter.org. Also, the Fair of the Free Child podcast, which is a wealth of information that my good friend Akila Richards produces and hosts. She recently released a series of episodes around parent founders, episodes 108 through 111, that will really give you some context to how other people got up and going. There's also a lot of great resources at raisingfreepeople.com. You can also find the entire podcast there, and literally every episode is just a wealth of knowledge. Some of the operational tools that are free that we use to run our program, we use the shared Google Drive, which has a ton of tools like Google Forms, Google Docs, Google Pages, etc. I mean, literally the whole Google suite is really, really good free resources that you can use to produce all the documentation that you need. Also, Trello is a really, really good resource for tracking, program communications. And Google Sites is a free resource for your website. Google Forms, I mentioned that already, for creating forms for people to sign up for meetings and etc. Seesaw is a really good resource for keeping portfolios of the things that the young people are doing in your program. It's a really, really neat resource. And also Slides Carnival for putting together a slide like this. This is my opportunity to, give them, credit for allowing me to use these slides. These beautiful slides were created by Slides Carnival, and they're a great resource. So again, I wanted to keep this short and brief. I hope that it just sparked some questions and gave you some ideas. I'm sorry, not that it sparked any questions, but if it did spark any questions, you see on this screen here how you can reach me. But I'm hoping that it gave you some ideas. And I just want to reiterate again, the whole spirit behind all of this is how to create a program that is accessible. Because one of the issues that I had when I was a teacher in the public school system, I wanted to create, when I thought about going off and creating a program, I wanted it to be accessible to the young people that I was working with, who came from working class and poor families. And of course, most of the private schools, if not all the private schools, have tuitions. And that kind of continues that whole system of capitalism and the education system, et cetera, continues to perpetuate social stratification. It continues to perpetuate the whole concept of the privileged and disprivileged, the haves and the have-nots. So my challenge to those of you who are watching this, my challenge to those of you who are creating programs, starting programs, running programs, is to continue to balance and think about how you can create your programs in a way that makes it accessible and run your programs in ways that get away from the need to have money. And I hope that what I just presented and what I shared will give you an idea for doing just that. So again, if you have any questions, you can find me at iGoToGROW on Instagram and Facebook. Also, you can email me at iGoToGROW@gmail.com. You can also find more from me specifically around the other work I do around social sustainability activism at Dr. Sunjata on Instagram and Facebook. And yeah, those are the main places you can find me. And I appreciate you for watching. And I hope to hear from some of you soon. And I'll see you all out there making a difference in the world. Until next time, I love you all. Peace.